There are signs of a shifting strategy for the president's legal team as they set now new conditions for a sit-down with special counsel Robert Mueller.
Yeah, the New York Times reporting that President Trump's lawyers want two things before their client will agree to an interview. One, the special counsel's team must prove that it has evidence that the president committed a crime. And two, the Mueller team has to show that they need testimony from the president to finish the Russia probe. But look, these new conditions may be less of a sign that they're willing to cooperate and more of a signal that they plan to fight the investigators and focus more on the public battle of public opinion. So we want to go live to CNN political correspondent Sarah Westwood. She's in Berkeley Heights, New Jersey, near where the president is spending the weekend. Sarah.
Well, Diane, President Trump sending yet another signal that he will not cooperate with special counsel Robert Mueller. The New York Times is reporting that Trump's legal team made those new demands of Mueller yesterday, asking that investigators approve that they've uncovered evidence Trump committed a crime and asking that investigators prove Trump's testimony is necessary to end the probe. Now, Rudy Giuliani, one of President Trump's top lawyers, told the Times, if they can come to us and show us the basis and that it's legitimate and that they have uncovered something, we can go from there and address their objectivity. Now, obviously, President Trump and his allies have spent months waging a war of public opinion against Mueller, arguing that this investigation is a witch hunt and pointing to text messages between two agents who have not been involved in the probe for months as evidence that the foundations of the investigation are illegitimate. President Trump has also already said in public that he's more than willing to sit down with Mueller. So obviously his legal team telling the special counsel that there's now a new set of preconditions is indeed a sign that President Trump is shifting his position here. Trump and his allies have pushed Mueller to wrap up the investigation, and yet now, as we can see, President Trump is continuing to resist what could be one of the final steps in concluding that probe. Diane and Victor.
All right, Sarah Westwood for us there traveling with the president. Thank you so much. Let's talk about this now with Joey Jackson, CNN legal analyst and criminal defense attorney, and Daniel Lippman, reporter and co-author of the Politico Playbook. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And all right, we've got Manafort, we've got Mueller. I want to start with the criminal defense attorney and the president's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, told the Times this. Let's put it up on the screen. If they can come to us and show us the basis and that it's legitimate and that they have uncovered something, we can go from there and assess their objectivity. Is that typically how this works, Joey?
It is not. However, there is not much typical about what's going on here in Washington these days. I'll say this. This is a negotiation, right? The reality is that there is no settled law as it relates to compelling a sitting president to testify. Many point to Nixon. I will remind everyone that Nixon dealt with the turning over of tapes. We're talking here about compelling testimony, not physical evidence. And so in as much as that goes, they're trying to negotiate so it doesn't get to an issue where it rises to a court having to decide. If you remember Clinton, Victor, of course, that was his testimony when he testified before the grand jury 20 years ago. That testimony was based upon a negotiated agreement between him and the special counsel at the time in order to give that testimony by closed-circuit television, not present, with his lawyers there. And so therefore, you know, the president's lawyers can ask for anything they want. Yeah. You know, a frappuccino. They can ask for, you know, tickets to my favorite game. The fact is that doesn't mean the special counsel has to concede to these demands. In my view, it's just another way of saying Trump is not going voluntarily, and it could reach the court. And final point, that's why the Supreme Court becomes so important. You know, you talk about who's on that Supreme Court, and that Supreme Court may very well make a decision as it relates to whether the president must or must not go and give testimony.
Excellent segue there. So let's go now, Daniel, to this. The timing of when this potential subpoena fight, as Joey just suggested there, is going to be important. We're 4 months out from the midterms. Washington's going to be going into this battle over the next pick for the Supreme Court. Just detail when this subpoena fight starts and how important that is to where it ends up.
So I think it depends on Mueller's people and whether Mueller himself thinks that negotiations with Trump's defense attorneys, basically, they are not going to go anywhere, that their demands are just getting more ridiculous. So once they conclude that there's no point in still negotiating over this potential interview, and if they still need Trump's take on everything that went down, then you're looking into something approaching September, October, when they would subpoena. And so I think what Trump's lawyers are worried about is that he has a history of not telling the truth in these types of depositions and just in general as a public figure. And so they're worried that they could get him on, obstruction or just perjury.